Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Buddy Fight video. Today I'm going to be continuing the topic of budget decks and kind of what I look for in upgrading starter decks on a budget. In today's example, I'm going to be using the Draknights starter deck. So Draknights is just a very simple starter deck that uses the G-Boost mechanic and more specifically the G-Boost base mechanic. So looking at the cards in the list, we have a couple of good cards that we want to definitely keep in the deck because they're very, very good. So some of those cards that we want to keep in the deck are cards like Gargantua, Dragod Shine, Dragod Oracle, Deity, Purple Dragon Shield. You could possibly keep Loud Voice, but I'll get into why I personally wouldn't keep Loud Voice in a second. And then if you really wanted to, you could even keep the item, but I would try to find a better item personally. So looking at the cards we want to keep, there's a lot of cards that we want to just cut because they're just not very good or effective cards. The big problem with a lot of starter decks or trial decks or special decks, whatever it be, the biggest problem is they don't have a good enough engine. So trying to find a very cheap engine is something you ideally would want to try to do. For this deck, I would definitely recommend getting a second copy of the deck or just picking up some of the singles of the good cards I already mentioned. So running 4 copies of Gargantua is probably very, very recommended. Running at least 2 copies of Gar Oracle and Dragod Shine, I would also highly recommend. But as far as the rest of the deck, the world is your oyster, and you're going to want to utilize the G-Boost mechanic to whatever potential you could use it for. For this deck, I'm going to be sticking with the Buddy from the trial deck, even though the upgraded one is going to be better, just for sake of saving as much as we can possibly save. I'm going to be using the starter deck one, because the power and crit booster is basically still doing the same thing, it's just this one's a little bit weaker. So when I'm going into finding new cards, first thing I'll look at is obviously what are some of the high synergy cards. So obviously with the power boost and crit boost, we want to have cards that can multi-attack. I found Gargantua because he has Soul Guard. He can stuff Dragon Deity Tribe cards from my drop zone into the soul of a Dragon Deity Tribe on the field, and then he'll, on top of that, gain us a life and draw card, and he gets double attack when there is a G-Boost on the field. So because he has Soul Guard and Gargantua Knight Dragon has Soul Guard, we could put it into either him or Gargantua Knight, so that means we could run a couple of cards based on the soul. So you could run something like Street Performer Yuga, where he has a great ability that allows you to basically countercall a Deity Dragon Tribe card on top of this card, and then when he's in the soul of a card, you also gain a life and deal damage on attack. That's just a pretty solid effect overall, so even if he's in the drop because he was in the gauge or we had to discard him or whatever it may be, if he's in the drop, Gargantua can take advantage of him, and it's similar effect with Gargantua, where we could stuff him into the soul of a Dragod on our field, and if the card in the soul has G-Boost, that monster gets Penetrate. So now Garga will be a double attacking, life-draining penetrator, thanks to Gargantua and the support cards that go into its soul. And then as far as some of the other cards that you could run, just again, looking for a lot of high synergies. Gargantua is just a Dragon Boomerang where he'll bounce himself back, so he fits into our formation very, very nicely, because ideally we're going to want to have a size 1, size 2, and then item formation, so a size 0 that can get itself off the field is very, very powerful. Same thing why we're running Gargantua, because he could also remove himself from the field, opening up that center slot so our item can attack. And then we're just going to be having a couple of engine cards, so you're going to want to run probably both Gargantua. So Awakened Deity Gargantua is just a different form of Gargantua using the G-Boost mechanic instead of using just Dragon Deity Tribes as a whole. And then I found Gargantua to be kind of an interesting inclusion because Ideally, you're going to want to play him before you play Gargantua Night Dragon, so that way you could get an additional draw. And drawing in the main phase, I would say, is really, really important. On top of which, if you have a Dragon on your field, he'll give himself a crit boost and double attack, so that means in combination with Gargantua Night Dragon, he's going to be hitting for a lot of damage multiple times. Again, it's just all about finding the cheap, high synergy cards that kind of make the deck a little bit better. So as far as the spell base goes, like I said, we're going to be using Gar Oracle, and we're going to be using Dragot Shine. Then we're going to be using Deity Purple Dragon Shield. So those are just some really, really solid cards that just come in the starter deck. But you could also utilize cards like a Gar Stream to make it harder for the opponent to interact with your board. You could use cards like Dragod Glyph that also gain you some additional resources, works with the G-Boost mechanic, on top of which it also makes it harder for your opponent to interact with your board. Garnite Stratch, and then it just board wipes your opponent in case they don't have any of those protections, on top of which it draws you a card and deals damage. And then you could utilize Gar-E Come On, which is a little bit more on the expensive side at around $2-ish. I don't think any given card on this list will cost you more than $3 per card, so I'm trying to keep it as low budget as possible, but still trying to have it be an effective deck. So Gar-E Come On is another great card. Again, a little bit more expensive side on the budget side of decks, but it's a very solid card that lets you countercall your size 1s, so you could kind of toolbox them, and ideally you're going to want to toolbox them between Saeli Gardra and the original Tith Gardra. And then you're going to have Combat Deity Roar as just another solid defense spell. The great thing about Roar is the fact that it stuns the opponent's card, so that way it can't stand up, which is very, very powerful and very, very important ability. And then ideally, you're going to want to replace the item with probably the Gar Twin Sabers, because they just work off of the G-Boost base mechanic, and it's just further protection and further countercalling, so it's just a very solid card overall. And then for the impact, just to round out the deck, you're going to be wanting to run Deity Strike Ultimate Gargantua Punisher, because it's not that hard of an impact to pull off. It counters Time Dragons, which is a very powerful trial deck also. And then there's just a whole bunch of other options you could be running. You could be running Loud Voice because it's a solid defense spell, but the only reason why I'm not super thrilled with running Loud Voice in a budget deck like this is I don't feel like there's enough card draw to really make Loud Voice matter, because we just barely have enough to make the deck functional, and we don't have a whole lot of excess card draw to just throw away into the defense spell of Loud Voice. And then if you really wanted to, like I said, you could keep the item if you just want to save it. It's still a solid item, but I think Gar Twin Saber is a little bit better. And then there's just a whole bunch of other cards that work with Dragon Deity Tribe that you could look up for both G-Boost and the original Dragon Deity Tribe, which focuses more around Dragod as a whole. So you just have a whole bunch of different options available to you, and it's just finding which options you feel like works best for you. So that's kind of all I really have to say about the deck. When I upgrade decks, I just look to see what are the other cards that fit into my budget and what is the deck lacking and what do I need to do. And more often than not with starter decks like this, you're going to be lacking a solid card engine and some more impactful support cards. So that's really all I look for in upgrading decks. And I even do this for decks that I like find or buy off of people. So that's kind of all I have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list in the description below. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions about the deck, about budget decking, and just want to leave a comment in general. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Buddy Fight content, and I will see you in the next video.